Jeffrey, you gotta get a second for me, buddy.
That was an aggressive lift like that. Come on, break the record, Jeff. Oh, this is 10 seconds, 12 seconds, 15 seconds. Go for the record. Oh, my God. It's a new record.
I'm going to have the mic. Can I have the mic? So blow, Seminoles wind, blow like you're never gonna blow again.
Well, I'm here. I'm not sure where Corey went. He was supposed to come out here. He's supposed to be here for this big win. The Noles have lost. Oh, it's coming in hot.
I made it.
Team again.
Cheers! Go Noles!
Go Noles!
Hi guys, nice to see y'all. It's been a long time.
And away we go. Welcome in, Warchant Gameday. Great to be with you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Jeff. That is Tom. Been helping out as well behind the scenes as always. There you go, Spitfire. Can't drink all day if you don't start in the morning. Cheers to you. If it must be known, I've got coffee. I got coffee to start these things off. We'll worry about the booze at Hotel Indigo today at 4 o'clock. We'll see you at 4 o'clock. Wasn't that professional right out the gates? Today's pregame show brought to you by Hotel Indigo, Tallahassee College Town. Whether you're a frequent guest, business hosting your event, or stopping by the restaurant, bar, rooftop, whatever it might be for an FSU home game, Hotel Indigo Tallahassee wants to thank you for your continued support, being part of the family. If you want to host your next event with the best view of Doak in the entire city, and that's for sure, call my man Jay Green, 850-755-9011. Hotel Indigo Tallahassee, welcome to our neighborhood. Florida State Clemson is ordinarily, as Tom likes to say, ordinarily, a big, big game. And I'd like it to be. I'd like it to be again, right? I'd like it to be a game where maybe in the third quarter tonight, against seemingly all odds based on the context clues of the previous 5 games, we are watching a contest that is, right there, within reach. Florida State having an opportunity to put some fear into Clemson, who no doubt will come into this game flying high, feeling extremely confident. Clemson's a team that has played about as good a football as you can play post the debacle against Georgia. And I think that team's out to prove that's not who they are. Florida State has, on the other side, not done any of those things. Just the one win over Cal. It has been a slog, to say the least. And today, the big news for those that haven't heard the Jeff Cameron Show during the week, weekdays 1 to 4, I would tell you that obviously a lot of people are maybe just a little bit of shot in the arm, a little bit enthused by the news that Brock Glenn will be the starter. The more you read into this, Tom Lang, and we have to be careful again about the way we talk about injuries or depth charts or decisions and those kinds of things. But, I think moving forward, you are going to see a combination of Brock Glenn and Luke and maybe Trevor. I just don't think you're going to see DJ again this year. I think we've moved on, and I would be surprised if he saw the field again for Florida State in any meaningful way. So that's kind of where we're at.
Okay, so are you, excuse me, are you talking about tonight? You see a mix of quarterbacks?
No, I'm just talking about the future of the season. This is the jumping off point for Brock Glenn and the rest of those quarterbacks in that room. I think this is, I think ideally you would not have to play Luke Kromenhoek, a true freshman, behind this offensive line against that defensive line. I would think that you would want to avoid that if possible, but I do think as the season wears on, you'll see a combination of those two quarterbacks.
Well, that's fair. I mean, look, this game usually has a ton of juice to it when you wake up in the morning. I mean, shoot, when you get to Wednesday, Thursday of Clemson week, you feel those butterflies because there's a whole lot on the line. And even though Florida State has only won once since the SMAG game, and that was last year. I mean, this has been a dearth of good moments for Florida State in this rivalry. There's a whole lot of juice that comes with it. This week, it doesn't feel that way. I'm hoping that as the day builds and as we get to Hotel Indigo at 4 o'clock this afternoon, that we might start to feel a little bit of that juice. But there's more hope than there would be if it was rolling out the same 11 on offense. If we were rolling out the same 11 with the same starting quarterback, man, you would feel defeated. I don't feel defeated. I just feel kind of like in limbo. And I'm hoping to see that there is a spark with the quarterback, with Brock Glenn today. The thing I'm looking for, number one, is the other 10 guys around him. Do they play with a little bit more pizzazz, a little bit more spunk and fire? Sometimes a change can do that, and guys respond to somebody else calling in the plays and signaling the plays. We know that the offense has to look different. You don't call the same plays for Brock Glenn that you do for DJU. Why would you? That's crazy. Or even if you call the same plays, in some circumstances, they will be run differently because there are options there, one of which is using the quarterback's mobility. That gives everybody a sense of hope, is that Brock can start to move a little bit, and the defense might have to honor his legs and his footwork. And I think that's where it starts today for Florida State fans is, while, maybe 5% of the fan base believes this is a winnable game or 10%, you're looking for signs of growth. You're looking for signs of hope, and perhaps Brock Glenn can bring that to the table this evening. We'll see.
I think you're right. I think that's the whole approach here is you got to get the quarterback moving around in a lot of different ways. You got to utilize his legs in a lot of different ways. You've got to try to wear Clemson down sideline to sideline, oddly, in a weird way. I don't think you're going to run straight ahead against them in a traditional sense. We'll see. They have surprised us before in that way, but not this year and not with this group that has been pretty banged up and ineffective even when they are healthy. On the offensive front. So, I am curious to see what kind of game plan we get from Mike. That's part of the bigger picture discussion that we've had a lot this year on the show is it's not just that the offense has been ineffective, to say the least. The numbers are staggeringly bad, especially when you consider what they've been and who he's been in his career, meaning Mike Norvell as an offensive play caller. You just really could not have seen this coming. We spent a lot of time, too much time early in the season talking about what was to be expected, what should have we seen, and what should have been coming out of camp, at least in terms of tempering expectations, those kinds of things. But I would argue with anybody that says they knew that this offense would be this bad. You wouldn't have argued that at the beginning with Mike, with the team he took over, during COVID. I mean, this is how bad this has been. And so I think this is a chance now, Mike, to kind of reset. I don't know that you've got the horses in the barn to be able to carry this through, but you may have the ability to find something to latch onto that can be the basis for your offense moving forward. And I think it centers around Brock Glenn's legs and his mobility. He's not Jordan Travis mobile from 2 years ago. He's not, I'm not trying to tell you this is a guy that's going to run for 100 yards a game or anything like that. But I do think that he's athletic. He's physically tough. He's a tough kid. He's not bashful. And if you can harness some of that inclination to take off on every play and really channel it into a game plan where you use his legs to keep a defense off balance and change the math, then I think you might have something moving forward. Even if it doesn't work out to your favor tonight because physically you can't block them, you would have something in these other games that we see on the schedule. I know that is not what we anticipated talking about this week of this game, but I do think you could find something that would give this group a little bit of hope, and that would allow you to play those younger players on the offensive side of the ball, whether it's Landon Thomas, Elijah Moore, Wayne McCoy, any of those guys. You have to have some semblance of an offense that you're running with Brock here, that those guys can also be a part of what we're doing moving forward. And that would probably serve as the catalyst for next season.
Yeah, that's what you're playing for at this point. And, he's not even Christian Ponder in terms of his mobility. He's not that fast. And so what you're looking for is moving the platform, changing the angles, giving yourself more opportunities to make throws, especially because your offensive line's not that good. You said it earlier this week on the JCS, which is now 1 to 4 here on Warchant TV, 4 days a week. that you sense I'm still angry. And you know what? On a day like today, I am. Because in previous games against lesser competition, you look at those teams in a vacuum and you say, oh, God, I mean, how could we not compete with this group? Or how could we not win in this facet of the game against that group in the first 5 games Florida State's played this season? And in a vacuum, maybe on paper, while you're right, you watch the game and you see that we're not even close in so many of these contests. And it just drives you batty because here comes a much more potent team. Here comes a team that's angry because they were embarrassed in their first game of the season, and they're carrying that with them week over week. I don't think today is about righting last year's wrong in the overtime loss. I think today is about continuing to prove that the Georgia game was a bit of a fluke. I think that's how they're motivated in their own locker room. Maybe there's a little bit of both there, but I think that's what is driving Clemson week to week at this point is they don't ever want to feel like they did in the game against Georgia where they were completely impotent. And we'll see what they bring to the table today. But it just frustrates me to no end that somehow we went from a 13-0 ACC championship season to today playing against one of your chief rivals that you just wrestled the conference away from. And we're talking about having to find things in the 60 minutes today that give us hope for 2025. I mean, are you kidding me? I know we need to move past that, but that's part of the game day experience for a lot of fans today, whether they were driving up this morning or they got into town last night or they're tailgating around the stadium today. They thought that Saturday, October the 5th was going to be a showcase, a title fight for, control of the ACC, perceived control of the ACC. And what they're getting today is, well, I hope Landon Thomas and Brock Glenn play well. Maybe Lawayne McCoy gets in there because I want to feel better about next year. Like, come on. That's where we are, though. We have to accept it.
Well, Kevin asked in the chat, why can't we physically block Clemson 5 years into the Norvell tenure? I'm sure Norvell is asking the exact same question, Kevin. He has to. He's got to evaluate decisions that have been made and where we're at and how we arrived at this point. It's the classic of every decision you made led you to this point. Right? I think what Tom is describing there is the reason that is staggering is because a year ago, you went into Clemson and won the game, and it was part of a 13-0 season, at least in the regular season and the ACC championship. Obviously, you got blown out in the bowl game. A lot of us in this fan base look at that game in different ways, but the point would be, you were in the midst of the climb and seemingly reaching pretty close to the mountaintop. Ultimately, I think the crescendo should be a national championship game or a national championship win or something of that ilk. That's why you just consistently climb. But you were in the ballpark of, obviously playing in the Invitational. And I don't think any of us could have thought that here we'd be just a year later talking a lot like we did when it was year one. And that is bitterly disappointing. It is absolutely confounding as well. I think that's the hard part in doing these kinds of pregame shows before what should be a great rivalry game in prime time with the nation tuning in. And most people, we thought that last year was a jumping off point for what was once a really great rivalry. And we thought, it's back. It's back. This war is going to play out between these two programs, the preeminent programs in the ACC on the football field anyhow. These two programs are now going to go back and forth with haymakers for the next 10 years. That's what we thought was going to happen. It would have been Dabo's turn in this case to allow me to retort. It would have been that. And then Florida State, could they weather that response and win it back-to-back years, Tom? And then he really got something brewing, the frustrations. And, it's just, I don't like to have to enter into the realm of incessant vitriolic discussions centered around Florida State on a Warchant game day, because game day is sacred. We love game day. We'll always love game day, meaning you wake up, family, friends, you have great memories, folks come into town, you're going to tailgate, you're going to hang out, you're going to talk about your team, good, bad, and everything in between and what's possible. And so I don't like to strip that away from people when they wake up first thing and they tune into us, which we're greatly appreciative of, and just talk about the many ways in which they're going to get thumped and how it is that the calamity of errors have led us to a place where we are indeed bereft of hope going into a game against Clemson. I don't enjoy that. And I don't think anybody loves hearing that over and over again. But we are also very, very pragmatic on this show. We are realists. I'm not going to pretend that Florida State has given any evidence to this point that suggests they're going to line up and block Clemson and do a good job of executing offense and be where they're supposed to be and communicate defensively. We have not seen any evidence that that is sustainable. And so that's where you enter into a crossroads and you say, well, where do I go? What do I lie to these folks and tell them that maybe today's going to be different because you're bringing in Brock Glenn, but you still have a line that can't block, receivers that can't separate, linebackers that are often confused and not able to cover a wheel route or a tight end on third down, a secondary that miscommunicates 5 years into Norvell's tenure, and obviously Adam Fuller is more importantly. It's tough. It's tough to wrap your arms around it.
David, we appreciate the comment there. And obviously, I believe that was part of the social media post we had last week at SMU. So we're glad that you finally got to see Florida State. Hopefully you see a better product here as time goes on. But yeah, that's where I appreciate the show that we have is it's honesty, brother. Like it's, is there a path to making it interesting today? I do believe that that's true. But I mean, just put yourself in the position of somebody who's setting up at a tailgate that they've set up for years at. And here they go this morning. The truck pulls in. His buddy's SUV pulls in right behind him. You open the tailgate. You get the cooler where it's supposed to go. You put your folding chairs where they need to go. You get those set up. The tent's up. The game is on. All right, now your DirecTV or whatever it is. You're good to go. You're set up. You pop open a beer. You sit down in your chair. You say, "What's up, my friend?" And then what comes out? Well, God, I don't know what's going to happen today, but I hope that we can, that's the real conversation that's going on, is that there's always that moment when you're set up, you have your hugs, you're so thrilled, the food's going, everybody's happy to be around each other, and then the conversation starts. And today that conversation isn't, oh my God, I can't believe it. Here we are again. Let's see if we can, stay on the throne and put the pressure on Clemson to go meet us in Charlotte for a rematch. That's not the stakes today. The stakes is about the future. I just hope, because there's been a reluctance on offense specifically, I just hope we see a lot more of the younger guys to go along with Brock. I know Andre Otto is on this week's depth chart as a potential co-starter. Landon Thomas is there. Mike Norvell's talked about some of the younger players. I'm gonna fall into that trap because that's all we have now. Is you're looking for sparks, you're looking for signs of life, you're looking for reasons to tune in the subsequent weeks that give you hope that this thing can improve instead of constantly tumble downhill. You want to know after today that you've bottomed out. This is who you're going to be fighting with over the next year and a half to reassert yourself in some way, shape, or form. And maybe it starts tonight, and maybe Brock gets people playing with some inspiration. Because everybody needs the juice. The fan base needs the juice. That building is going to need the juice tonight, and so does that locker room. Because the way it's going right now, they don't feel it.
They don't, and I do want to see them play with intensity. I do want to see them play with focus. I want to see them play fast. I want to see them play ultra aggressive, and not this on your heels, uncertain. I don't know how many of you, and let me read Steve here because I appreciate you, Steve, very, very much. That's awfully kind of you. Great to see you last night, Jeff. Looking forward to seeing you both at Indigo today. Thanks for all of the great content, Noles. Thanks, Steve. It was great to see you too. Yeah, I was, by the way, really quick, let me just allow myself to do this here. I didn't get to nearly as many people last night at Corner Pocket as I would have liked to. My son was playing a high school football game in Cairo. And I had to get on down the road about 45 minutes out from where Corner Pocket is anyhow. And so if I didn't get you last night, I wasn't being a snob. I wasn't being aloof. I saw a lot of people that were there. I never know how many people are there to talk to us at Warchant and our staff, or how many are there specifically to see me or Corey or anybody else for that matter. But I do try to go around, shake hands, and thank people for listening to us and subscribing to Warchant. And I didn't get to a lot of people last night, so it was just because I had to go to a high school football game. My apologies. All right, that said, thank you again, Steve. And hopefully you guys will come out if you're still in town. 4 o'clock today, all you guys. For anybody that was out there last night, we will be at Indigo. And by the way, the Indigo situation's awesome because we're not doing a pregame show. We're doing it right here, right now. we have all the time in the world, a couple hours to hang out and pop some cold ones and talk about all things, whatever it is you want to do.
It's got everything you want to. The food is delicious. Register sausage. They make it Fenway Frank style, which is really, really good. It's fresh, hot, ready to go. And then also you've got a full bar, air conditioning, fresh, clean bathrooms in air conditioning instead of porta potties. A wonderful view of Doak Campbell Stadium, and they've got games on TVs up there. It is an outstanding setup. If it gets a little warm, maybe it's a little muggy and rainy, again, you've got cover. Indigo knows what they're doing. It's an excellent experience, so we look forward to seeing those of you today that are going to make it out there at 4 o'clock.
So my hope about that aggressiveness and that focus and that intensity and is, you watch football. I was telling Tom on the way over here to the studio today, how many of you stayed up and watched the UNLV Syracuse game last night, which was awesome. A great football game. And, you watch those two teams play, and what Barry Odom's done at UNLV is nothing short of miraculous, quite frankly. That's UNLV, for those of you who don't know, has never mattered in football at any point. I mean, they really haven't mattered at all. And to see them ranked is insane. But UNLV won that game in Syracuse won that game in overtime, 44-41. And it was as good a football game as you're going to watch. And one of the things that I noticed was that those two teams got down at various points in the game by more than one score and fought back not only to tie but take the lead. Then the other team did the same, fought back, tied, take the lead. But they hit. They play fast. They play with conviction. They understand what they're looking at. They trigger and they go. Guys were making plays. Guys were making plays everywhere. It was a tit for tat. You make a play, offense turns around, makes a play. Defender comes up, levels somebody. It was, 5 guys around said defender on that same defense picking him up after the play. That speaks to a togetherness. Like, we're in the fight together, that kind of thing. I look for that stuff. I don't spend a lot of time talking about leadership on the show and those kinds of things because sometimes I think that gets overstated. But I do look for signs of real togetherness. I look for, because football is so hard. Any of you who've played know this. It's so taxing and it's physically draining and it hurts. There's a lot there. There's a lot of sacrifice that goes on in football. And what it does is it brings everybody, if you're doing it right and everybody is selfless, it brings everybody together because that guy next to you has gone through the same things that you've gone through, where you have a day that you don't want to be there. It's 100 degrees and 80% humidity and your thigh has been killing you all week long. And today it's going to get hit again. It's going to hurt again. It's going to be what it is, right? That forges a bond that usually reveals itself on game day, on a Saturday where you do all of that so that you can go do this, so that you can play the game that you have a passion for. And in particular on defense, but usually it runs through the whole team. You'll see that connectivity. You'll see that bond that I'm talking about that is forged through all those tough days. I don't see it with FSU, Tom. It's another one of those things that really bothers me. I don't see a bunch of guys that play for one another and that play together and show that they care. And it reveals itself in little ways, like I was talking about in the game last night. A guy makes a great play going sideline to sideline to keep a 10-yard gain to a 4-yard gain. And when he jumps up, there are 8 other players right there to slap him on the helmet. Good job. Let's go. Let's go. And then they go. It's an emotional game. And you're pulling each other along. Maybe, Tom, by playing so many of the young guys who by definition are hungry, they want to show their wares. These are guys, many of whom have been here a year but haven't gotten on the field very much. In some cases, they're redshirt freshmen, so they got in a few games last year. Maybe they're true freshmen who have already made an impact on the coaching staff with the kinds of plays they made in camp, but they weren't to be trusted just yet. Maybe they're just a true sophomore and they didn't play as a freshman, but they got in enough that they burned their red shirt, whatever it might be. Those guys are hungry. They may not always know what they're doing. They may not have a great feel for the game just yet. Emotions could sometimes get the best of them and they can try to do too much. because they just want it so bad. But wouldn't you and the rest of this fan base take that all damn day than this lethargic, veteran-laden, staring around, looking at each other, sometimes looking like perhaps they're taking some plays off kind of approach to football that we've seen so far this year? I think we would. I think we would exchange some of the youthful mistakes for the energy and hopefully fight and togetherness that I'm talking about that could be born today because so many young guys might get a shot.
Yeah, give me what Edwin Joseph plays like. Give me that guy. Give me 11 of those guys because it is full speed. It's passionate. We had a lot of guys that played like that last year that are on this roster too, which is just so annoying because we're almost halfway done with the season. They are what they are at this point in terms of juice that they play with, and there's not enough of it. And sometimes I feel like it's because they're tentative, because they don't know where to go. And whose freaking fault is that? They don't know where to be. Like, think about that. Last week against SMU, you ran some more zone coverages and you had busts where on a 3rd and forever, there's nobody within a 20-yard radius of a receiver up the middle. It's just like, you don't know where to be. Okay, whose fault is that? And some of it's the players. It's not all one thing. It's not all one place. But they don't make mistakes at 100 miles an hour. They make mistakes in second gear. And you just see them kind of moving around and they're kind of feeling for it and they're looking for it rather than just playing. And that happens on offense too. It happens, when we're trying to pull guards and tackles, you see the tracks that they take, the steps that they make. They just look like they're trying to gracefully arrive at the place. Rather than kick the door down, they're trying to place the door handle in their hand and just gracefully open the door. And it drives you nuts because, like you're saying, last night's another example of it. I mean, there's a couple folks in the chat that say they fly around. A hog watcher says UNLV flies around. And Vitus is saying, how is it we can watch all these teams with competent O-lines and linebackers, even the quote-unquote crappy teams, but we can't even be competent? These are fair concerns. Yeah. Part of that is about preparation. And preparation is a shared responsibility of the coaches to do their jobs and communicate well during practice, and then the players to do their homework. And I'm sure both are lacking. Both elements are lacking in that situation. But the passion, you can be unprepared, play at least with a little bit of passion. And I'm not talking about 15-yard penalties out of frustration. I'm talking about flying around. And they just don't do that with any great consistency. So, again, that's the hard part. It's easier to watch a bad football team if they're laying it on the line.
Of course.
You were mad about this week on the show. You can't say definitively that they look like they're laying it on the line.
Yeah, I don't like to do this because I think the worst thing you can do is accuse a player of not caring or not playing hard. I'm not saying they quit. People use the quit word a lot, but I can't stand watching people play football in a half-assed manner. It's just not a sport that allows for it. It's too hard and too violent and too fast, and it doesn't allow for it. You can get away in certain sports with taking a play off or perhaps maybe not giving everything you have on a particular possession. Some sports allow for it. It's almost necessary in some sports just because of the cardiovascular aspect of it. But football really just doesn't allow for it. And honestly, unless you're playing a crazy tempo team that's trying to run 100 and something plays on you, man, you're 18, 19 years old. You're in the best shape of your life. You train for this. In modern football anymore, college football, even with what we see with these offenses, people are running 60, 65. It's almost like pro football. You don't get nearly the same number of plays. And I'm afraid of what I'll say if I keep down this road, but get up and play some football. What are we doing?
Yes, and this extends everywhere. Everywhere you look, it could be linebackers, which is a place you point to often. It could be the way the offensive line seems to play when they don't go straight ahead. Now, when they straight ahead, they push people. When they go straight ahead, they push people back. Mm-hmm. They lean on people with their mass. And you don't want to be the Monday morning quarterback, but you're saying, can we just run that a little bit more? Because it looks like they're succeeding. Like I like success. Can we allow success to beget success? It breeds confidence. Perimeter blocking. I mean, what happened to that? There was a standard. This was the talking point from Ron Dugans that, Micah Pittman is one of the reasons that Florida State was so good at perimeter blocking, because he could say as a coach, if this little man can do it, Johnny Wilson, why can't you? And apparently that turned Johnny into the player that he was, which was just a mauler. He would drive you into the bench as a blocker. And there were other guys who would do that as well. But now anytime there's a perimeter bubble, we look weak. We look weak. We look meek. And from a body type standpoint, that's not the case. I'm not telling you that our roster top to bottom looks the size of Alabama or looks the size of Ohio State or Georgia. It doesn't. But we ain't what we were 4 and 5 years ago either. You know, we're not that tiny group where we're at the tour of duty saying, they better have one hell of a chip on their shoulder and a great set of trick plays because they're not large enough. This group is, and they just got done playing 5 smaller teams, 5 teams that are smaller than they are.
Yeah.
Not today. The team you're playing today is not smaller than you are. So you better show a level of grit, toughness, sandpaper, you name the cliche, that we have not seen. And maybe the fear of what Clemson can do to them motivates them to do so. But I just, it should be in your DNA. And clearly this group does not have it through 5 games.
Yeah, I think the reason people have noted that they look soft, and I think that's true, they do look soft. I'm not saying that each individual in a vacuum is soft. Like, I think if you met these guys separately in a one-on-one situation and, you know, assessed their toughness through whatever, I mean, you wouldn't think they were, but collectively they do play soft. They really do. And it is, it's something to behold. I have a lot of opinions about why I think they're kind of soft. Tom knows he's tired of hearing me talk about this. I would change practice structure, frankly, and I think they should, but that doesn't do any good for me to talk about right now. I think they got to hit more, and they got to hit more early in the week on Tuesdays. But that's just an aside. but these are all the lessons you're hoping Mike learns for after the season, where you're like, okay, well, we got to do this, and this. I got to change the modus operandi because clearly this failed, and I can't let this happen again. But that doesn't do you any good right now. You're playing Clemson tonight, 7:00, on a Saturday evening. You can't do all those staff changes and program changes that we're all talking about openly now because of what this season has wrought, right? That's what it's done. That has led to the conversation that we're having, which is, all right, who would you fire? Which kids would you run off? Who do you like to bring in if you do make replacements on the staff? How should Mike look in the mirror and realize that he's failed and change this, and this about himself? Like, you know, these are the things that we're having to talk about because of what's happened. But it doesn't do you any good because you're going to kick off tonight. You're going to play Clemson tonight. You have to show up and play a football game, and that is frustrating. I don't like having the big picture, larger discussion 5 games into the season. It's annoying.
So we just got a picture in our text from somebody who's over in College Town and showing how it's a bit of a ghost town.
Unsettling. Mm-hmm.
Right. I'm not the guy that, you know, the cliche about the customer is always right. Actually, the quote goes longer than that. But in this case, you know, College Town typically on a game day like this, people can't wait for the doors to open so they can, you know, bloody their Marys, so they can have a mimosa, you know, and they get their game day fired up, ready to go. The tailgate lots are open. These are where maintains are issued, right? In a situation like this, you should have had to have issued a maintain. It didn't even show up on the radar. There's nothing to maintain about. Like, whatever. Go, you know, if you show up, have a good time. This is where
I'm sorry. I'm picturing the poor guy who's defeated, Tom, that we're describing, that you're talking about. And it's a different kind of not maintaining. It's not the enthusiastic, I'm too pumped up and I've had one too many because I added a shot in there because Jerry's in town and he wanted to do one. And I don't get to see Jerry very often. And we're both Noles and we graduated together in 97. And I'm going to do a shot with Jerry, damn it, because it's Florida State Clemson night. And I'm going to go ahead and do it. The next thing you know, it's 3 hours before kickoff and Jerry's in the bushes puking. Yeah, that's that, like that. No, this would be a different kind of sad watching of the lack of maintain where you go, oh, my man's blitzed and it's 2 p.m. He's been drinking since he got here this morning. He's not even talking to anybody. He's just sitting over in the corner. He's putting him down.
He's trying to, so he doesn't have to remember what he takes.
He doesn't want to remember this game at all.
Right. Like, I agree. You got to bring it if you're in the stands tonight. You got to do everything you can to be supportive. But it's different. The energy is different. Like there's one where you are, the gravity of Doak Campbell pulls you through the gates and it pulls you to your seat and you cannot wait. You know, what time do the gates open again? And then there are other situations where you wake up and you go, damn it, I'm doing this for my Noles. I love my Noles. And no matter what, you know, today's a no matter what energy rather than I can't believe it. Like this is what I've been waiting all year for. And this is where the customer is right. They have responded, I think, appropriately to what they're seeing with their own eyes. which is a group that doesn't give them a whole lot of reasons to feel fired up. Now, hopefully some younger players do today. We're all looking forward. We all want to see something, but College Town should be running out of things at 9:41 in the morning. If they open at 9, they should be running out of foods and running out of certain bottles of things. They got to go make a run to the local store. And today the machine's going to take a little bit longer to start up, which is just, come on, guys.
You know, I do want to address something that I think the listeners and fans of the program want to hear, meaning the football program. I do think Mike knows this. You know, I think a lot of times you'll hear questions. We get questions in the chat. We get questions in email all during the week. We get questions on Twitter. We get questions in whatever forum, on a message board at warchant.com, wherever it is, right? You get inundated with questions about why this, why that, how does this happen? I'm still seeing this. What do you think about this? And I appreciate it because it speaks to a passion that fans have about this program, and we share that passion. So completely get that. I can't answer all of them. We don't all answer all of them, but we know they're there. And sometimes I try to get back to as many people as I can. But the thing about it is, well, most of those questions come with sort of an implied Mike doesn't get it. Mike doesn't see it. Mike doesn't understand. Mike doesn't. And I don't think that's true. I don't think it's true. I think Mike knows. Well, I know Mike knows. I'll put it this way. I know Mike knows 100%. I know. All right. So take that for what it is. He knows this isn't right. He knows this is a disaster. He knows this is completely unacceptable. And he knows that he's got a lot of work to do. That I can tell you is 100% true. Now, I'm not saying that to defend Mike in any way. I just want you to know that I know that he knows, because this is a guy that I think is not lost in one of those situations where can't see the forest for the trees. I don't think that's it. It's just that a lot of the impactful changes that you're going to want to make cannot be made until we're out of the season. You know, you're not going to be able to make changes that affect this team in a meaningful way moving forward, other than withholding playing time for guys that aren't playing hard, letting young people play. You can change up certain responsibilities on your staff. There have been wild rumors for 2 weeks floating around about the possibility that many members of his staff will have some responsibilities shifted if things don't change. I know that's out there, and I would guess that that is true. That is true, because these are buttons you can push in season. If your defensive coordinator is not coordinating and not getting it done, you can change responsibilities within that staff as to who coordinates the defense. And I'm using that as an example. You can do it with your linebacker coach. You can do it with your offensive line. You can do it with your receiver coach. You can do it with anybody you want on your staff. If you think a different voice in the room is going to help change things or maybe get the message across or better explain what you're asking a kid to do, then you're going to do it. Because at this point, you're desperate. I mean, you are absolutely desperate. But the truly impactful changes that we all want to see really can't be done until we get to the end of the season. And so it looks like you're just doing the same thing over and over again, and you're certainly saying the same things over and over again in the postgame. But what is he going to say? You know, he has said phrases like, "This is embarrassing." I mean, that lets you know that he knows that this is how fans feel. That lets you know that he understands that this is unacceptable. But no coach is going to go to the dais after a loss, after a poor performance, and say, you know, I should be fired. And I understand that all of you would like to see me fired, and I'm going to fire everybody short of me being fired. And also, these kids suck. They're just not going to do that, and they shouldn't do that. And it's not how you handle it. But he knows. He knows that this is ridiculous. He knows that these kinds of pregame shows and talk shows and articles and conversations amongst the Florida State faithful and those that cover the program are happening every day. And he knows why. He knows that they caused that. This team, this performance, this group, that staff caused these conversations to take place. And the scary part is it's only going to get louder. It's only going to get more, in some cases, on the margins, irrational. it's only going to get more angry. There's just no way around that, Tom. And you're talking right now. Let's see what this crowd's like tonight. I hope they're loud and energetic and enthusiastic, and maybe Florida State turns the corner a little bit tonight because we make a change of quarterback, which is really the significant story of the week, is that Brock Glenn is starting this game, and we do think you're going to see continued infusion of the youth. But maybe we turn the corner tonight. But it's going to get worse because attendance is going to begin to suffer. You've already seen in some cases the money people make their feelings known. Okay. I know from talking to business owners in Tallahassee, I'm talking about restaurants and hotels and those that would be greatly affected by this poor play. They have all expressed extreme consternation, frustration, and certainly have revealed in some cases significant financial losses because of the way this team has performed. That's when things get ugly. That's when things get really ugly, when the money gets affected. We don't like to talk about it, and it is gross, but it's reality. And the money is getting affected.
Well, that's where you have to keep the folks that would invest in this program, who are the diehards and who don't run from a fight. And we've had to do that recently a lot, but you have to keep them engaged. And the best way you can keep them engaged is to go youth movement first, which is something you can do in season. And it's something that you're doing by default, I think, today at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's also with staff changes. I mean, that's the two ways that you get people who can help you out of this mess by spending more. That's how you keep them engaged, is you show them that things are different and you're trying something materially different. Now, again, as you get into the big picture discussion about how Florida State navigates the future, you're talking about a lot of money over this offseason that needs to be spent in any number of places. This all the while you're spending, tens of millions of dollars on a football-only facility, tens of millions of dollars on stadium upgrades for next year's season opener. Florida State is investing right now, aside from the football program, like the team itself, Florida State is investing like a program that is ascending to the big time once again. And rightfully so. We just won, 19 straight. So they're doing what they should be doing. They are doubling down on a successful investment until the season begins and it's not a successful team anymore. And so now all that money you're throwing at a football-only facility and you're throwing at the stadium, you're kicking yourself because you assumed that the return on the investment this year would be X, and it's X minus what? A lot. So how do you get from there to here monetarily? Unfortunately, these are the things I'm thinking about during a 3-minute, 2-minute timeout commercial break. It's 3.5 minutes. It's ridiculous, college football. But when that commercial break is happening, I'm not thinking about, okay, in this situation on 2nd and 6, we need to put ourselves where it's 3rd and 2. No, my mind is going to, okay, how can they do this without private equity? Because once you let that devil in the door, I don't know that you can undo that particular. You're thinking about how the empire building can continue in the face of one poor season. And man, there are no easy answers to that. But it would get a whole lot easier if Brock played well tonight and a couple of young players showed up tonight in a way that maybe some of the veterans haven't. Because if you lose the game by, God forbid, but you lose the game by 7 and Brock throws for 250 and a couple of scores and he makes a couple of plays with his legs, the conversation shifts. Does it magically go away? No. But it shifts and people say, okay, I can't wait to see what he does at Duke. And that's how you start the ball rolling towards getting people to lock in.
I would say, too, and I'm never going to tell anybody how to spend their money. It's their money. And however you want to spend it, you spend it. And, I see in the chat there's a conversation. Some people have decided they're not giving money to the Battles Inn anymore. I'm sure there's people that are not giving to the university anymore, or coaches clubs, whatever it might be, right? They've already shown you they can spend the money the correct way. That 13-0 season was a direct result of the Battles Inn and coaches doing a good job of evaluating transfers that they ended up having to give a lot of money to. And thank goodness the Battles Inn was able to do that, or else we would have been screwed. I also understand that it is right to say that they, meaning Mike and staff, have wasted the Battles Inn and their money by bringing in the players they did this year and misevaluating. And that's not the Battles Inn's fault. That's Mike Norvell's fault. That is this staff's fault, period. And I know this. You're not climbing out of this hole. And again, give to whatever organization you want to give to or not. You're not climbing out of this hole by having less money. I can tell you that. So unfortunately, and I've described this scenario on the air during the Jeff Cameron show several times in the last 2 weeks, my frustration is this. You've asked these members of a collective like the Battle's Inn, you've asked those folks for money. All universities, that especially now where we're at in this space now, have collectives, have means to go out and bring players in or be competitive on that market, right? To be able to at least say to a recruit that you really want, and you're competing with that recruit, competing for that recruit with another school who also has a collective in money, to say, yeah, we can give you a fair, comparable offer. So that's no longer at issue here. Let's talk about the other reasons you should come to Florida State over wherever, right? They've done that. And what sucks is that this misevaluation and this season now means that you've got to go back to some of those people, whether it's the guy that gives $5 a month or the guy that gives $1 million a year. And you've got to ask them again, I need you to double down. I know we just wasted your money this past year because we screwed this up with our evaluations, but we're going to have to kind of probably spend our way out of this. And don't turn your back on Florida. And that's a hard ask, and that is an angered response from people, and I completely understand their frustration. I hate that that's what this season has brought as well, is that now you're going to have to, because Tom, you and I have talked about this, they're going to have to go and say to, especially these guys that, this is a world we don't live in, guys. There are people out there that do give hundreds of thousands of dollars. Let's just put it that way. Mm-hmm. And those people are the ones who have the means.
They could make Benjamin, toilet paper out of Benjamins. What does it matter? Yeah.
Those people have that kind of money. And most people don't. I don't. You don't. Most people don't. And they're not happy. They're not happy with their return on investment because of this season. They didn't think that this is what they were going to get when they were asked to stroke a sizable check. And those people now are the people that you're going to have to go back to and say, listen, sorry, let us make it up to you. But yeah,
let us make it up to you by you giving me more money. That's the pitch. Is I'll make it up to you if you can do what you just did, maybe a little bit more this time, but we'll get it right. And you have to do that at the administration level too. I mean, they have an athletic department budget, don't get me wrong, but typically with coaches, buyouts, and hirings, you need a little kick. You need a little extra kickstart to the machine, because you're not going to suddenly cancel a sport or two to go pay for, football coaches to be bought out so they can leave and be paid to go away. It's not just about NIL budget. It's not just about coaching salaries and buyouts and acquisitions. It's about both. And we have a budget for, one of those things when things are operating smoothly. But when you're bad, NIL costs more, because you can't have a discount like in Ohio State. You can't have a discount situation like Alabama, where it's, well, I'm turning people out to the league, so you can choose to come here or not, but I'm sending somebody to the league. It's your call. Yeah. We're going to give you a good offer, but we're not going to give you the most money. So it's your call.
This is why it's important to get a program running at peak efficiency. And this is also, once again, profoundly why we're mad, because you thought you were headed to peak efficiency. When you won 10 games and then you won 13 games and you wrestled back the conference from Clemson, you thought rightfully that you were upwardly mobile and trending towards peak efficiency. And once a program can reach that, it's not easy to sustain. Excellence over a long period of time is the goal that everybody has. And it requires an awful lot, both from the head coach, his staff, the administration, and certainly the fan base who are buying up the tickets and contributing in some fashion or another year-round, year-in, year-out, decade in, decade out. But that's what's required. But they'll do it. They'll all do it. They'll work the 20-hour-a-day job for the $10 million a year that they make, just like you and I will stroke the alumni check and the booster check, because Saturdays are fun. And going over there and watching a team beat somebody's ass 38-7, who happens to be a chief rival or whatever it might be, is rewarding to you as you hold hands with your Seminole brethren and say, here it is, look at us, this is awesome. It's tribalism at its best. I get it. We'll all do it. We've seen it. We've done it. But you don't do it when it's this dysfunctional. And then it becomes like pulling teeth. Nobody likes to be in that situation because eventually it leads to apathy. And apathy is the death of a football program. And it is tough to get out from under it. We know because we've had to do it more than once. We had to do it at the end of the Bowden era. Jimbo came in, found a path to greatness, won a national championship in 29 straight games, and then that faltered, and the train came off the tracks. Then we were in the valley for a long time, and Mike came in and got this turned around, and that's why we didn't expect to be having this conversation on Warchant Game Day for Florida State Clemson.
Yeah, that's why we're talking about this instead of, man, I'm worried about TJ Parker off the edge against Darius. That potentially could be a mismatch, and I wonder how Florida State's going to scheme around that. Do they send a second body type in there to help? Because Darius had a problem against Boston College with somebody who was around 250 plus as a defensive end. Here's a 6'3" kid, leads the team in tackles for loss, he leads the team in sacks. That should be offensive keys to the game, defensive keys to the game. All right, let's see. What do they do with Phil Maffa this year? They run him out of counter an awful lot more than they did in the Shipley days. So we got to be alert on counter, play with good leverage. Instead, you're saying, where's the money going to come from, man? I don't know where the money's coming from to fix this problem.
Well, let's do this in the remaining couple minutes that we have on the show. Let's talk about aspects of this game that we do think Florida State might have an opportunity to exploit, and conversely do talk about some of the areas where we have some concerns. It'll be very interesting to watch as they take the field tonight to see if TJ Parker is playing for Clemson. They've got a lot of really good players on that defense. We know this. I've talked about Barrett Carter many times before, who I think is a joy to watch play football. That's how linebackers should look. Peter Woods is a good player. They've got a lot of good players. Sammy Brown, they got a lot of good players. Lawson's a good player. They just a bunch of guys that you watch and you go, oh man, I wish that guy were on our team. But I do think, we're going to start with this. If Brock Glenn, and he is going to be your starter, you do have infused mobility here. So maybe you can mitigate the pass rush, mitigate the aggressiveness of Clemson's defensive line by moving him around. Certainly he'll, on a read option, keep, whereas DJ was never a threat to really run the ball. Even if he did keep, he couldn't gash you. I think Brock can. I also think Brock will get the ball out quicker on these RPOs, Tom. I do think he will. He's got a pretty quick release. It's not a slow, winding, hitch-addled release. And so I do think you may see this offense play faster.
If he decides to cut it loose. That was one of his issues last year, which is he would hold it and try and see it before he threw it. Now, that's because he had 3 hours notice or 4 hours notice that he was starting against Louisville. That's part of it. It's so difficult to assess the Brock that we've seen thus far because the situations he's been put in are either emergency work or an opt-out fest 2023, which was, the Orange Bowl game. So, it's tough to know exactly what you're going to get out of Brock, but I agree. I think the delivery is quicker. And he's quick himself. Is he fast? No. Once he gets moving, let's just say he's able to break the pocket or Clemson's in man and there's a rushing lane for him and he takes off the middle. Those first 3 or 4 steps aren't going to wow you, but if he can get to the 5th or 6th one, that's when he starts to get moving. It's almost like Mendoza at Cal. Not a fast guy, but if you let him get motor and then he can get downhill, and he does have some skills in the open field. So that's part of it. They should mix it up again in terms of how much they roll him out, some of the different looks they provide with rollouts, with bootlegs, things like that. Yeah. I mean, they ran sprint with DJ a lot. They ran a couple of bootlegs. They moved the pocket a little bit. You can do it a hell of a lot more with Brock. And one thing I've noticed, and it might be because Clemson has played lesser competition, so they weren't scared defensively, but it doesn't matter. Maybe a bad habit or two has set in. I really feel like things like the wheel, things where you put second-level defenders like linebackers and safeties in conflict, kind of like us, you can get their eyes and their feet in the wrong place and maybe catch them for a big play or two. I don't think this Clemson team is anything close to what they were in their championship runs.
Well, no, and Georgia showed that. Yeah.
I don't even think their defensive front is like it was last season. But I mean, they're certainly a lot better than we are, and you're going to need misdirection to help you, move the ball down the field and get a couple of splash plays and get the crowd involved in it. And then on the other side, very quickly, I think their offensive line is gettable if our defensive front wants to put some real stuff on tape tonight.
Well, that's the area, Tom, that I wanted to go to. I'm glad you brought it in. I do think that you can. If Florida State's defensive line understands that this is the film that NFL scouts are going to be looking at, because this is a matchup that is vastly superior than that of Memphis or SMU or Cal, they understand that this is big boy versus big boy. Let's see what we got here. Josh Farmer's got a chance to make some money tonight. Daryl Jackson, I'd like to see you have one of those games where we go, there it is, and obviously Patrick Payton, those kinds of guys. This is that game. You can keep this team around until they find some footing on offense, maybe something that's working, by just rising up tonight and getting after it, and maybe getting Cade Klubnik to have a little bit of doubt again. He hasn't had it since the game against Georgia. He's done anything he's wanted to do against 3 outmanned opponents. Make him think again about what it looks like, what laborious feels like. Get into that again.
Well, you got to cover better, too. There's a bit of a trend the last couple of weeks of coverage breakdowns. Now, some of that is in man. Some of that is because we're trying to run zone and we can't do that very well. But, man, I can't trust us enough to know what concepts are we going to break out today. Like, I don't know. When you get into second and long, third and long, you need to make sure that you can get whatever rush you can home quick enough that those breakdowns don't happen, because that's a stadium killer. That's a momentum killer. It happened enough against Cal, but you end up winning that football game against a team like Clemson. If you get them, if you're fortunate enough to get them into 2nd and 13, 3rd and 15, you need to get off the field in those situations, and that the front four has to pave the way. I do think there will be opportunities for the defensive backs to make some plays, but again, the front's going to have to set the tone, and then you're going to have to deal with the same stuff that we've dealt with week in, week out, which is when they do run counter to Maffa. Where are your linebackers? Where are your safeties? Who are those guys going to be? How much of a youth movement do we have early on? Florida State's rotated enough younger players. Okay, are they going to be the guys that are in there for the throws of the game? And if it is Kirkland coming downhill and Hussey and then also Nicholson, are they all in the same place? Like doubling and tripling up in a gap, or are they where they should be? These are basic questions that, they need to prove that they can answer consistently enough. And if they do, they're going to get the ball back in Brock's hands.
Today at 4 o'clock, we will be at Hotel Indigo. A reminder that the pregame show is brought to you by Hotel Indigo. Really appreciate them at Tallahassee College Town. It doesn't matter whether you're a frequent guest, if you are a business hosting your event, or if you're just stopping by the restaurant, going up to the rooftop, getting the best view of Doak Campbell possible. Make sure you do it at Hotel Indigo. We really appreciate your continued support and being part of the family. And if you want to host an event there moving forward, call Jay Green, 850-755-9011. Hotel Indigo Tallahassee. Welcome to our neighborhood. Another reminder, too, before we leave, I know that many of you, I know it's tough. I'm doing it. I'm bringing my whole family. We're going to have a good time regardless. The travel and tailgate experience can still be fun, even if the team isn't playing well. Florida State versus Notre Dame is going to be played regardless, and it's going to happen Saturday, November the 9th. You could be in Chicago. You can get on a big old bus to South Bend, where you've got food and drink and fellow Noles, premium open bar, 4-hour all-exclusive tailgate to boot, a food menu, heated tent. I did it a few years ago with Tom. We had a great time. Remember that, buddy? That was awesome. Warchant staff will be there, or many of us will be, not all of us, but Windy City Seminole Club is going to be hosting a bash, all that good stuff. Here's what you want to do. If you're interested, Spirit Express, and that is spear as in you're throwing a spear, it express, spiritexpressaltogether.com. Go there, check it out, and type in the promo code WARCHANT in order to get 20% off.
It'll be a good time because there's going to be an event with the Windy City Seminole Club on Friday in Chicago. So you'll be able to get together with your fellow Noles in one of the great cities in the world, in Chicago. It is remarkable to me how clean that city is. Just living in New York as I did this past year, but then also being up in New York a whole lot in my life because family up there, and they got like trash days and there's just trash bags all over the street. Chicago is gloriously clean. We'll take the cold weather too. Hopefully it's not 10 like it was last time, but it adds a little snap in the air, pep in the step. There'll be events on Friday and Saturday.
I want 10, Tom. I want 10. I like 10. I was telling my buddy the other day who was complaining about how cold it was last time we were there. I was like, no, that was it. That was what I wanted to feel and see. You were sick as a dog. You don't count in this argument. You were under the weather the whole time. I was feeling froggy. I had my big jacket on, ready to go.
You were feeling froggy. I was feeling a bus in the third quarter. That's what I was feeling. I rode the bus back in the third quarter because I was about ready to fall out. So that's okay though. It is a turnkey tremendous experience. So hopefully you if you're thinking about it, they also have tailgate only packages. If you don't need the bus charter service from Chicago, there are tailgate only packages if you're coming into South Bend from a different part of the country.
Nice. Really quickly, hang in there. Hang in there, guys. This is rough. We can't turn on each other. I can feel it. It's like a civil war brewing amongst Noles fans. There's a lot of anger.
We're in this together. We agree.
Yeah, we're in this together. We're all Noles here. Hey, I'm angry too. We're all frustrated. This is unacceptable. I agree. But we love Florida State. And let's see how they come out and play today. We'll be there to assess it. Post-game show, Tom and Gene. The airing of the grievances can take place 15 minutes after this game ends, if need be. And then don't forget, on Monday, JCS back with you at 1 o'clock, 1 to 4. We'll break down this game, talk about the next, and where the program goes from there. And we always appreciate your support. We appreciate you being here on Warchant Gameday on a Saturday morning. Try to enjoy the football, man. Try to enjoy this thing. Football season is something we all love. Even when our team isn't great, we still love the game. You can do it. Percy says my liver can't take another season like this. It can, Percy. Livers are resilient. You tell that liver to get to working. I've told my liver many times, pipe down. We got another tough day ahead of us.
William, the code is Warchant. There you go. He's asking for the code. It might be a joke, might not be, but code is Warchant for SpiritExpress.com.
Yeah, it is. And it should be a good time. And Tom snuck in a let's go Mets. There, he snuck it in. Good luck to you, buddy. All right. For Tom and Ben, great job producing as always. We appreciate you. I'm Jeff. Take care and go Noles.
Hey, this is Jay Green from Hotel Indigo Tallahassee. Can I stop and say thank you? Thank you for telling your guests to stay with us. Thank you for hosting your corporate meetings and social events in our rooftop meeting space. Thank you for hanging out with us on FSU football game days. Believe it or not, this sales guy isn't selling anything. I just want to say thank you. But if you've never seen our rooftop and I can ever help, give us a call, 850-755-9011. We